Welcome to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 50th episode of the SImple Sophisticate, and good morning. We're talking about happiness today, and I don't know of a better way to start the week than to talk about happiness. Today's episode is about the 30 ways you can design a happier life, and it was inspired from my reading of Dr. Paul Dolan's book, Designed by Happiness, Change What You Do, Not How You Think. And the moment I picked this up, which was admittedly a few months ago, I was intrigued. I mentioned a few of the principles he speaks about in the first few chapters in the weekly newsletter that goes out to subscribers about this equation that is seemingly so simple, but that we often dismiss or ignore or really aren't aware of. And I'll get to that in today's episode. But before I dive in, I wanted to give you a brief teaser of what this week's Petit Plaisir is. It is a book I have been and have devoured, and you've seen it on my Instagram feeds, and I've talked about it with a few of the commenters on the blog and on Instagram, and I cannot wait to talk to you more about it at the end of today's episode, so please stay tuned. All right, but let's get back into today's episode. Why not design a happy life? Let me begin with a quote from the author of the book I just mentioned, Dr. Paul Dolan. He says, "You'll be the happiest you can be when you allocate your attention as best as you can." Now, much of the happiness we seek and either experience or don't experience in our lives is solely of our own making. Just think about that for a second. So if we're really happy in our lives, we can pat ourselves in the back. If we, for whatever reason, don't feel happy, then we're responsible. But this is the thing. I don't want you to get down on yourself if you find yourself relating more with the latter than the former. You can design a happier life. And perhaps, and I have a great feeling that that's the case, you've been focusing and doing the wrong things. And you can change those, and that's the good news. Now, while a significant life change may make it easier to establish the necessary changes we need to cultivate the happy life we desire, such as a new house, a move, or a new job, it is absolutely possible to design a happy life right where you are in the present moment. If indeed you are currently in the middle of a big life change like myself, prior to laying down roots, begin to make a list of what truly makes you happy after listening to today's episode or reading the show notes, and begin to create ways to establish a lifestyle designed to welcome as much happiness as possible. However, if you are still going to have the same job and home tomorrow, be sure to tune in to today's episode where I will share a list of 30 ways to design a happy life, as is the focus of Dr. Paul Dolan's book, Happiness by Design, Change What You Do, Not How You Think. I am confident that we are all capable of instituting the change we need to cultivate the life we desire. So today's list, as I just mentioned, is entirely inspired from Dr. Dolan's book. So if you are intrigued by this list, I will provide a link on today's show notes and you can take a closer look at it for potentially adding it to your library of resources. So let's dive right in. Number 1, cultivate a life of equal parts productivity and pleasure. This is the elusive equation that Dr. Dolan says is often missing from the many happiness books out there that we've undoubtedly read. I know I have, and I have a feeling many of you have as well. It's not to dismiss those books. They're great books. But let's get to the heart of these reasons why certain things make us happy. And maybe the same thing we do, we're like, why isn't it making me happy? Maybe it throws the balance of this productivity and pleasure equation out of whack. Maybe it completely disrupts it. And just knowing that is going to be huge. So the key is knowing this equation. Create a life that, while dynamic, because we're constantly doing different things and our lives are changing, establishes that balance between productivity and pleasure. Number 2, let go of what you think should make you happy and begin to recognize what actually does make you happy. And that is one of the core components of living simply luxuriously. If we look at the mission statement, and I'll provide a link to that on today's episode, the mission statement is about understanding who you are, understanding what makes you tick, being aware of when you're being led around by the nose, and therefore knowing when to say no to those things so that you are thinking for yourself. So decide on what does make you happy and let go of what should make you happy but doesn't. Number 2. Number 3 is allocate your attention appropriately to what will truly make you happy. So now that you know what does make you happy, and now that you know what the equation of happiness is, productivity, equal parts productivity and pleasure, start spending your attention on that. We only have so much attention. As Dr. Dolan reminds us, your attention is a scarce resource. Just like any resource out there, fuel, air, gas, those kind of things. Our attention is a vital resource that we need to protect. Quote, what you attend to drives your behavior and it determines your happiness. Attention, therefore, is the glue that holds your life together. So be disciplined about your time and where you spend it, and be disciplined about your thoughts and what you allow yourself to think about. Number 4, establish situational awareness in your daily routines. Now, this is a term that is used in the book, situational awareness. In other words, establish checklists or routines that cover seemingly simple information, but if forgotten or overlooked, can have disastrous effects. The example Dr. Dolan uses is airline pilots. They go through a long series of checklists before they take off. These are probably simple things that they learn at the beginning of their training, but if they forget to check certain things, could have absolutely disastrous effects. So the key is to be aware of what you need to have done. Your doors locked at night, your seatbelt on, different things that if you don't do it, if for whatever reason a horrible situation happens, could have disastrous effects. So again, we're being preemptive, preventing things before they have a chance to happen that would make our lives worse off. Number 5, seek achievement, but not at the cost of health and personal relationships. Number 5 is going to be different for all of us, and at different points of our lives, it will change. The key is to truly be aware of what you're sacrificing and because of that sacrifice, what the benefit will be once you achieve your goals. Will it pay off, in other words? Because I've talked about this many times before. Often we have to struggle. Oftentimes we have to really set aside certain pleasures in order to reach certain goals. He's not saying you can't do that. He's saying, though, in the long run, sometimes we do too much. Sometimes we sacrifice too much. And by the time we get to that end goal, we're like, why did we do that? And this is like predicting the future, and that's impossible to do. And I'll kind of give you some tips as we keep going down this list on how to make a good decision here. But that's, again, the key. Is the sacrifice worth the benefit? Number 5. Number 6, find a career in which you are happy with your boss, your pay, and your daily tasks. The key here is that your job, your career, needs to be a fit for you and your individual personality, rather than pleasing the external world's expectations, the society as a whole, your parents, your friends, whoever it is. Make sure that what you're doing, again, it's back to number 2, makes you happy, truly makes you happy, rather than should make you happy. So maybe you are working part-time. Maybe you're not making as much money as a full-time person, but you're happy. You like your boss, and you feel like you're getting what you're worth because you're only working part-time, but it's good pay. If it makes you happy, perfect. That's key. Number 7, be aware of the truth. Knowing is better than being ignorant. And in the book, they go into deep analysis of this, but ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss, because when you know, you can act accordingly. When you know, you can make a good decision. But if you act without all the facts, you may end up making things worse. You may be taking steps backwards rather than forwards. Number 8, have modest expectations. In other words, don't set things too high, expectations too high, and don't set them too low. I just want to go off on a tangent here a little bit. I always get frustrated with a quote that says, if you don't have expectations, you can't be disappointed. I always got frustrated by that. Because to me, expectations is like a goal. It's like, well, if you don't have goals, then how are you going to achieve anything? But I like this middle ground. Have modest expectations. And what he talks about is be an optimist, but have a contingency plan. Have a plan B. And because you have a plan B, you will not become distraught when your expectations are not met. Realize that they may not be, but be hopeful that they will. So in other words, have hope, but have a contingency plan. I like that. Number 9, seek self-improvement for the right reasons. So you want to lose a few pounds. Are you wanting to lose a few pounds to impress someone? Or are you wanting to lose pounds because you know that you'll become more comfortable in your own body and you'll improve your overall health, therefore reducing your stress and improving your happiness? Do the self-improvement for the right reasons. Be honest with yourself. Only you can do this. Only you can do this. Be honest with yourself. Number 10, tamp down your inner critic. Recognize and realize your strengths and weaknesses. And in doing this, you are basically saying, I'm fallible, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. All of us are going to come to that conclusion if we're honest with ourselves. We're fallible and we're imperfect. But when we recognize that, we'll take control of our thoughts because we won't say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I aced this. I can't believe I got a perfect score. I can't believe I didn't do this. I can't believe I did. It's like, wait a second, you're human. Did you do your best? Did you do your best? And as long as you know that, then you will reduce your stress, you reduce that inner critic in your head, and you will improve your happiness. Number 11, trust your experiences more than you trust your desires. Often we are terrible predictors of how something will make us feel in the future if we've never experienced it before. If we're basing it on what advertisements say we should feel, on what others say we should feel, and we don't even know these others, or we have totally different values than those others, then we're not setting ourselves up for the best possible chance of achieving happiness. So rather than trusting what you think you'll feel, trust what you know you have felt in the same situation in the past. Now, if it's a new situation, I will get to an idea about that further on down the list, so don't worry. But trust your experiences more than you trust your desires. Number 12, on that same vein, trust your own experiences more than you trust your beliefs. This one is interesting, but let me explain. Actually, let me let Dolan explain. The brain basically has two systems, although it really doesn't, but it's his way of really kind of explaining to us why sometimes we think we're going to be feeling one way and we actually aren't with regards to this whole idea of beliefs and past experiences. System number 1 is the unconscious mind, and system number 2 is how we think based on the environment we have lived in and the experiences we have had in the past. If we rely only on our beliefs, we are relying only on system 2, we're not factoring in our humanness, which is our system 1, which is our unconscious mind as well. That mind will respond very similarly to everyone else in certain situations. Therefore, experiences are much more reliable to determine how we will feel in the future. And if we don't have those experiences, I will tell you who to look to in a second. 13, find a role model. In Stumbling on Happiness, Dan Gilbert shared that, quote, research teaches us that the experiences of other people like us are a useful guide to the impact of an event on us, and often a much more useful guide than our own predictions about the impact of that event. So don't just find anyone as a role model. Find a role model that has experienced what you hope to experience, has maybe a similar personality. Don't just look to anyone, look to that person. Number 14, forget the New Year's Eve party. What I mean by this is forcing happiness to occur is less likely to make it materialize. So let go of the reins a bit and stop trying too hard to plan happiness, whether it's a surprise party, whether it's, in this case, I just mentioned the New Year's Eve party, things where we expect all this happiness to rain down on us. Let go a little bit. Let go a little bit. Number 15, Consider options briefly when making a decision rather than dwelling upon them. While Dr. Dolan isn't recommending making rash decisions and doing that quickly, in other words, he does suggest that we briefly contemplate choices when they're presented to us and then give it some time, let it go, and return to it later and make a decision. Don't ruminate on it. Don't stress about it too long. Often our intuitive mind has made the right decision, and we just have to come to terms with it or to realize why it is right. Oftentimes we don't know why it's right immediately. So don't make the decision then, but contemplate it briefly then. Now, I've just covered the first 15 ways to design a happy life. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. We have so many more to get to, but I want to take a brief 1-minute intermission, and I will see you on the other side. Welcome back. We have 15 more ways to help you design a happy life, and we're going to get right back into it. Number 16, we're still talking about this idea of how to make the best decisions that will make us happier. So number 16, don't set rigid deadlines for making decisions. While it is recommended to make decisions rather quickly, trusting your gut and then reassessing after a duration of time, being forced to contemplate something in a certain amount of time can often force the wrong or far less preferred decision. In other words, let the decision come naturally. If it takes you 5 seconds and you know, beautiful. But if you're told right from the get-go, before you even have been presented with the options, you have 4 minutes to make this decision, oftentimes we don't make the best decision. So if you are in a position of leadership, this might be a directive you want to eliminate from your vocabulary, even though you do obviously have a limit that you need the decision to be made by. Not saying it might be more helpful. So number 16, don't set rigid deadlines for decisions. Number 17, select your social circle carefully. Now, this one specifically, I started thinking about a letter I recently received from a reader, and she asked the question of how do I go about recreating a social circle? This reader has recently gone through a divorce. I say recently, but it's been a handful of years, and she still says that's the only thing she's struggling with when it comes to cultivating the life that she loves. And I'll just start off by saying it's not easy to start from scratch. It's not easy to start new. And while it's not completely new, completely blank slate, you're always probably going to have someone, whether it's a phone call away to call or a family member that you trust, you still are starting to build something different, something new that's helpful and happy and in tune with who you are now in your life. So I just want to reassure you, first of all, to say it's going to take time. And number 2, take small steps. Some advice that Dr. Dolan gives in his book is, as we just said, start small. Schedule a meetup with people that have similar interests. Go to a book signing or go to a book reading or go to a particular sports activity if that's what you enjoy. Just start small. Don't have huge expectations when you're there. Just be yourself and enjoy yourself and let it evolve from there. But at the same time, he says, reach out to a friend from the past. And I don't necessarily mean someone you haven't spoken to, but it could be. But someone who doesn't live where you live now. Someone who's not physically able to spend time with you. Just to reassure you that you do and know how to be a friend. And this will boost your confidence a little bit. Back to this specifically, select your social circle carefully. You want to spend time with people you like. You also want to spend time with people that you are inspired by and who have your best interest at heart. When you are seeking advice from them, you want to know they are not going to give you advice that will benefit them or a business opportunity down the road that specifically has only to do with your best interest. Behavior science reveals that what we are told matters less than who it is that is telling us when it comes to advice. People worth listening to, also known as good messengers, as Dolan calls them, have 3 attributes. Number 1, they can be trusted. Number 2, they are experts in the field you are discussing, and how you become an expert is by what you have experienced, what you have done. And number 3, they are like you. This could be personality, this could be background, this could be so many different things, but you connect on some levels. So number 17, huge component for your happiness is to select your social circle carefully. Number 18 is set up routines that assist you in living a happier life. Living closer to nature, for example. Walking in the morning with your dogs. Enjoying hot water with lemon as you read your morning paper. Set up routines that are enjoyable and leave you happier, but that also involve both a little bit of pleasure and purpose. Number 19, create default systems that always leave you without regret. Having smaller plates in your cupboards. Leaving your cell phone in the office at night rather next to your bed. Turning off your alerts on your phone. Establish systems that happen easily. So you leave your power cord for your cell phone in your office. That means it's a pain to take that cord out and put it next to your bed every night. So you just hook it up in your office and you go to bed. Or the only dishes you have are smaller dishes. So guess what? You end up putting less food on your plate. Set up these little seemingly simple changes that will help you live a happier life. Number 20, make commitments that when completed will leave you happier than you intended. Whether it is saying you'll meet a friend at the gym or scheduling a date for brunch, even if you're feeling tired Sunday morning, it is easier to go than to opt out. Start small so you're less likely to opt out and more likely to just go, because you know ultimately you will have enjoyed yourself. Number 21, break commitments when it's a sunk cost. Dolan defines a sunk cost as something that is gone and you cannot get it back. In other words, the class is already paid for and non-refundable, but you quickly realize you've already learned this information or that it's the wrong class altogether. Walking out in the middle of it is a commitment worth breaking. Dolan uses the example of realizing that when you're out at night and you have the first thought of wanting to go home or leave, he has realized for himself that he needs to heed that thought, that the night usually doesn't end up getting any better once he has thought that. So that's just a lesson he has learned for himself. Number 22, surround yourself with people you want to be and can be more like. As much as I am inspired by Olympic athletes, I know I will never have the initiative or desire to train as hard as they do for any particular event. It doesn't mean that they aren't good people, and it doesn't mean it wouldn't be interesting to spend time with them in a unique and wonderful situation. But rather, in the long scheme of things, surrounding ourselves with people who have similar goals or who have achieved goals we believe we too can and want to achieve is better for our overall happiness. So yes, go to that lecture by that speaker that just absolutely inspires you. But maybe that's not someone you're going to spend every single day with because they've achieved something like climbing to the top of Mount Everest that you don't really want to do. You just want to get some tools or key bits of information that will help you live your life better. Number 23, cultivate healthy, helpful habits. You want to establish ways that keep you going with the grain because it's less friction, it's less energy wasted, it's easier. But that's the thing. You have to set up a system in which what is easier is also best for you. And that is going to take some designing on your part. Habits involve 3 parts: the cue, the routine, and the reward. We talked about in number 18 about the necessity for establishing helpful routines. And when it comes to forming habits, this is the easiest thing to tweak. Tweak your routines and it'll help you create better habits. Number 24, let go of multitasking. Productivity, one of the 2 key components to happiness, drastically decreases when we multitask. So let's stop doing it. 25, limit your technology distractions. A significant cause of unintended multitasking is the technology we have in our lives. You know what I'm talking about. You're typing away on your computer and the email alert goes off. And then you're like, oh, I want to check that story on my favorite news website. And then someone comes in to talk to you. You're doing 3 different things at once, and none of them probably very well. Set limits on when you will and won't answer your phone. Set limits on when you will get your alerts for your email or on your phone. You need to take control of your technology. Don't let it master you, as we've talked about in previous episodes. Number 26, think less about money. While we all need to think about money to some extent, putting our financial house in order, etc., there comes a point when we need to stop. Trust your system, tweak it when necessary, and then let go. If you view every minute of the day as money, then you are not living in the moment. If you are worried about the stock market every day and how your money is doing, you are not living in the present, and your attention has been robbed for the negative effect of worry. Number 27, invite new experiences that pique your interest. When we are engaged with new experiences, people, etc., these moments require our full attention, which makes it much more difficult for our minds to wander. While engaging in new experiences regularly, this can be very taxing emotionally on our minds. So choosing to do these new experiences is something you want to simply just sprinkle throughout your days regularly in small doses that you know you can handle and that will increase your happiness. Now, earlier in the episode, we talked about how to trust your experiences, not your desire or not your belief. We have 2 different points there. What if you haven't experienced it? Well, if you're curious about it, you've done your due diligence, you've done your homework, you got to try it. You got to reach out so that you can gain those experiences. And then you'll know. Now, another way is to talk to people who have actually experienced what you want to do. Make sure that they are similar to you in as many ways as possible, but then ask them, how did it feel? Now, don't just ask anyone who's done it, because if they have a different personality, different background, different anything significant to how they would interpret the situation, their experience may be wholly different than what yours could be. So be careful there. Number 28, unearth the root of procrastination. Do you really want to perform that task? Is it part of achieving productivity or pleasure? Depending on the balance of each of those, determine if what you are putting off needs to be done. And if not, why did you say yes? And if it does need to be done, recognize the negative effects procrastination has on your overall happiness and refrain from doing it. Simply stop. Get your jobs done so that you can enjoy the rest of whatever you have to do the day. Number 29, do something for others. Maybe it's not volunteering at the soup kitchen, which tends to always be the fallback idea when it comes to thinking and doing things for others, but perhaps it's volunteering with a group of people to clean up the river, the beach, the highway annually, or speaking up for others who don't have a voice. This will increase your happiness. And the last one, number 30. We've talked about a lot of different ways you can design your life, so I want to end with this one. Number 30, begin the design process gradually. There is a lot to think about in today's episode. Take a few of them at a time. Take small steps with each of them. And gradually you'll see a magnificent change. The world we live in, the work, home, and community that we reside in plays a large part in our ability to find and maintain a happy life. The key is to be aware, and that is where the designing part enters the picture. Paying attention, living consciously, and not wandering blindly through each day is how we design the life that makes us feel happier. Each of us will need different details to make us happy, so we must get to know ourselves. That's crucial. Experience, reflecting on these experiences, will guide us to the understanding of who we are. And the equation that has been so perplexing to so many is really quite simple. Bring together equal parts pleasure and productivity, and you will find the happiness that you seek. Dr. Paul Dolan's book, Happiness by Design, Change What You Do, Not How You Think, is a rich resource. And while much of this may sound simple, I will admit to having overlooked much of it at different points in my life. Whether this post was a wonderful aha moment for you, or simply a helpful refresher on how to cultivate a happier life, I hope from this day forward that you experience just that, a happy life by design. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you want any of the show notes or you want to print out this list, go to thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast50. And there will be a link for sure to the book that I mentioned, but as well a handful of other posts about happiness that you may enjoy today as well. Now, stay tuned for this week's Petit Plaisir. This week's Petit Plaisir is a book that I am adding to my Francophile library. It reminds me a lot of French Women Don't Get Fat, and also Bonjour Happiness, and so many other French lifestyle books that I have devoured, and I have a feeling you have too. The book is The French Beauty Solution, Time-Tested Secrets to Look and Feel Beautiful Inside and Out. It is written by Mathilde Thomas, who is the founder of the French skincare product line Caudalie, and it is a detailed resource on how to take care of your skin. She begins, however, the book, which is what I love, with just simple lifestyle ideas, how to live well, whether it's how you relax, how you spend your time, how you exercise, simple ways that is a good refresher on what it means to live well without exerting ourselves unnecessarily or spending money unnecessarily or doing things to ourselves unnecessarily, meaning plastic surgery, for example. But the second half of the book is dense with very specific ideas for do-it-yourself skincare routines. She goes through the different types of skin, whether you're dry skin, whether you have oily skin, whether you have combination or normal skin. And she gives you very specific recipes for masks, for cleansers, everything you could ever imagine. Also, she talks in depth about different types of serums and how to make your own so you don't have to spend $75 to $100 as well. There were only a few places, and this is what I was really impressed with. There were only a few places where she actually recommended products from her beauty line. Now, she could have spent this entire book talking about her beauty line, but I have a feeling if you use her products, they speak for themselves. But we don't all have that kind of money. And therefore, she is giving us her wisdom. This is the expert I was talking about earlier in today's episode. She knows of what she speaks. And if you are looking for healthy, beautiful skin, read this book. And you will just not only look better, but feel better because she really does start from the inside out. She talks about the different foods to eat and what they do as well. It just came out July 14th this past month. I know you're going to love it. I have absolutely adored it. I posted it a few weeks ago on my Instagram, and many readers were asking me what I thought of it. As I was going through it, I was enjoying it, and as I now have finished it, I want you to pick this up, rent it at the library, whatever you want to do, and enjoy it. You're going to find a lot of value in it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast where I'll recommend a book, a film, a recipe, or anything to bring more insight into how to live simply luxuriously. Anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonjour!